Welcome into your Weather Impact extended weekend forecast. Well, not weekend, extended forecast here on 13 WMAZ Plus. We do have a lot to talk about, and first things first, we'll go ahead and cut to the chase where we do have another weather impact alert in place for this weekend. It is going to be for a long time, so I want you to go ahead and put these days kind of into your mental memory. This is what you need to pay attention to with your forecast all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and into the first half of Monday, probably until we get to around the midday hour. So it's going to be about a 2.5 day weather impact alert. It is long lasting. The potential impact that we are looking at, it's not going to be like this past weekend. It's not going to be about an inch or two of snow, no problems on the roads whatsoever. Our impact that we are looking at here in central Georgia, that is still potential. It is still possible. We could backtrack this. We could take away the weather impact alert. But right now, the general consensus, and there is good agreement amongst the long-range models, that a potential wintry mix is going to be widespread all across the southeast. And it can lead to some ice accumulations, and specifically areas of central Georgia could be looking at accumulations up to about an inch or two, which for reference, it only takes about 1/4 of an inch to maybe a 1/2 inch of ice to cause some problems in the way of some hazardous travel conditions and of course in the way of some power outages. But right now what you need to do, this is still a good ways away. It's only Tuesday so far throughout the work week. Saturday, Sunday, and into Monday is getting into the territory of around 5 to 6 to even 7 days away. But what you need to do is continue to stay up to date. So watching each and every forecast that we give throughout the morning, throughout the afternoon, and throughout the evening hours as we continue to get a much better idea about the specific impacts that are going to come. What you need to also do as of right now, any outdoor plans or plans to travel throughout later this weekend, specifically the second half of Saturday into Sunday and into the beginning of your Monday morning, you need to try to avoid the roads if you can. Now, I imagine as we get a better idea, we start to predict specific accumulations, we get advisories, we get warnings. There will be many school schedules that get revised. There will be many things in the way of church services, anything in the way of weekend plans that are scheduled that will have some cancellations and some postponements. But for right now, go ahead and make sure that you have a backup plan, a contingency plan. I do expect this weekend to be a forecast that you are not going to want to be on the roads. So let's go ahead and circle back to Sunday, where we did have our fair share of some winter weather all across the area. Specifically, it looks like Jasper and Putnam counties lucked out with the most. Some areas saw about 2 to 3 inches and recorded some snowfall. And then we did see most of central Georgia kind of fell within this 1 to 2 inch range. Looks like just outside of Monticello, that 3 that you see was the highest reported total. And as you continue to go up to the north and the northwest, you make your way up to Atlanta, there was no snow recorded whatsoever. We didn't finally start to see some snow recorded until you got down into the middle of Henry County, which I can attest. I was driving back on Sunday morning and I didn't start to see any snow on the ground until I finally got to the Locust Grove area, and then those snowfall totals substantially got higher as you went down to the south. But then you see up here in Macon, Warner Robins, all the way over even into Dublin, we did record some form of snow, but down to the south and the southeast, it was a lot more scarce than areas up here like Houston, Peach, Crawford, Butler, over to Taylor County, Upson County, Bibb County. You can see the lighter blue shades are going to result in only about snowfall, maybe a couple tenths of an inch. In portions of Telfair, Wheeler, and Montgomery counties, some of you may not have gotten lucky whatsoever with any snowfall whatsoever. So now let's go ahead and look at last year's snow event, where you can see some of those lighter colors. They were present farther up to the north, but as you go down farther and farther to the south, you see these deep dark blues, some 4s, some 5s, some 6s, even an 8-inch mark over here around Lake Blackshear. And I believe the highest total that we saw was around 9 inches somewhere in Chris County. So it definitely doesn't really come into comparison of the amount of snowfall we did see as of last year. But some of the snowfall did translate into our fair share of some recorded rainfall. So here's a look at where the numbers do stand as of the month of January. The 17th and the 18th, only about a 1/2 inch of rain recorded over the course of both of those days, or something in the way of liquid form. So far for the total this month, only about 1.37 inches of rain. Still a good ways away from average, around 4 inches, and the record back in 1925, still over a foot of rain, 13.22 inches of rain to be exact. But I do imagine that when we get the latest update with the drought monitor as we go throughout later this week. We'll get the release on Thursday, but the data will be taken as of today. So we'll take into account the midweek last week, some of those rain chances that popped up, and this past weekend in terms of whatever was recorded in the way of melting snowfall, melting snowflakes, and of course maybe some rain that could have gotten mixed into the forecast as well. So here's your headline. Staying dry until tomorrow night, Wednesday night. Then we'll kick off on and off rain showers. Yes, rain showers on Thursday and Friday. Before we go into the weekend, and yes, we still have a lot of question marks about the weekend, but we'll go over what the latest model runs are saying and talk about why we went ahead and issued that weather impact alert so early, about 5 days out in advance. So here's a look around the quad. We have high-level cirrus clouds in the forecast, not blocking any sunshine whatsoever, just not that crystal clear deep blue color that you have seen over the last couple of days that is in the skies. Here's a look at your temperature map where we finally have made the increase up into the 40s, low 40s, some mid 40s like 44 in Macon, 46 in Warner Robins, still holding on to the upper 30s in Monticello, up in Eatonton. And then as you go down to the south and the southeast, a good cluster of some 45s, 46 in Cordele, and a 48 at the warmest all the way over in Vidalia. It is a very cold forecast all across the United States. In fact, even this morning, I saw a 39 all the way down in Orlando, Florida. Now they have definitely gotten an increase up into near the 60-degree mark already, 52 in Jacksonville, but 43 in Montgomery, 41 over in Jackson, and a 46 in Charleston. Many of our neighboring cities are sitting around the same temperatures as us. It's just those areas along the Gulf Coast that are starting to be a little bit more warm. 53 in New Orleans and Panama City, and 61, the warmest number that we do see on this map all the way over in Houston, Texas. So dew point temperatures, we don't have any humidity in the forecast. The frontal boundary that pushed all the snow out of the picture has ushered in some cooler and some drier air for the beginning of this week. We saw it yesterday for the first day of the work week, maybe for some of you, or maybe the last day of your extended weekend for Martin Luther King Day. But now we are continuing into Tuesday with a very dry forecast, and these dew point temperatures continue to show that it is a very dry atmosphere that is probably resulting in maybe the cracks in some of your skin. If you're like myself, you've been having to apply a lot of lotion over the last couple of days since that drier air made its presence known. So continue to utilize that lotion and that chapstick as we have the very dry air in place. And the winds don't really help in terms of having some chapped lips either. That has been kind of the case yesterday. We did have a bit of a light breeze, but nothing really substantial in the way of winds, and that's kind of a similar story that we're looking at throughout today. A bit of a light breeze, sustained winds anywhere from 5 to 10 miles per hour, but some occasional gusts could get up to around 15 miles per hour, maybe even just slightly above that mark, like a 17 mile per hour gust down in Vidalia. So it can make the feels like temperatures hover a little bit lower than what they're actually sitting at. So you can see some 32s, some 33s, some mid 30s, some upper 30s, and some low 40s. So while your actual temperatures may get on up into the upper 40s, like 48 in Vidalia, we can see that the highest that your feels like numbers do go is somewhere in the low 40s, with many areas farther up to the north still feeling like the 30s as we get closer and closer to lunchtime. So let's go ahead and talk about the almanac yesterday, and I was talking about it all morning long because it's a really good reference about what today's forecast is shaping up like. 51 degrees for a high temperature yesterday, 24 degrees for a morning low temperature yesterday morning. So compared to average, both of those numbers are a good deal off, and definitely continuing the very cold stretch of weather that we have had as of the last week or so here in central Georgia after January was off to a very, very warm start. 79, the record high temperature back in 1990, and 5 degrees was the record low temperature back in 1977. So once again, it was a blistering cold start to the morning yesterday and once again today, but we can always put it in perspective. 5 degrees is absolutely criminal. That is not something that you want to walk out the door to, especially paired up with the slightly breezy conditions, which probably made 5 degrees feel more like 0 degrees, I do imagine. So precipitation, none of that recorded yesterday. Your departure of rain hasn't really changed much. In fact, I think it still has gone down farther and farther into that negative category in light of most of our precipitation being of the frozen form this weekend. So snow doesn't help out as much in terms of maybe getting some alleviation with the drought conditions and just how far behind schedule we are here at the beginning of the month, but nothing to fret about. We are still only about 20 days into the month of January. We still have a whole 346, 45 days to go until we get into the end of the year. So so we still have some time to make up some ground, even though we are starting a little bit behind pace. Sunrise yesterday, 7:36, and sunset, 5:55 p.m. We are creeping closer and closer to our first 6 p.m. sunset that we have not seen in quite a while. So let's go ahead and circle back to that 51-degree mark yesterday, which marked the second day in a row that we saw below average high temperatures. We actually had one day this weekend where we were slightly above average, and that was Saturday afternoon, up into the low 60s, and that came after a stretch of 3 days in a row with some well below average numbers, 54, 48, and 54 to close out the work week last week. So your total now for the month of January has 6 below average days, and we have 13 above average days. So we're still not even halfway to the mark of the above average days in terms of below average ones. However, it has been finally some seasonably appropriate weather, which has been a welcome sight and even brought us some snow as of Sunday morning. However, it is just going to get kind of downright insulting as we go throughout the rest of this week and especially into the midway portion of next week, when we could be forecasting maybe some of the coldest air that we felt so far in the winter season. So another cold day for your Tuesday afternoon, mostly sunny with the exception of those high-level cirrus clouds. 51 for a high temperature, a lot like yesterday's high temperature, and we will pair it up with a northwesterly breeze where some of those occasional gusts up to 15 miles per hour could make it feel just a little bit cooler. So our meteogram for a change is actually going above what I do have in the forecast, but 51, 52, just picking at straws. Those numbers basically feel the same, and as we go into the evening hours, just as we approach the 6 p.m. hour, which is basically when sunset is now, we'll start to see those numbers drop back down into the 40s and eventually make their way back down into the 20s like they did as of this morning. But in terms of how it actually feels, let's take a look at your wind chill values throughout today. Still feeling like the mid to the upper 40s as we head into the afternoon, peaking at around 50 degrees. So as opposed to the actual temperature of 52 degrees, feeling just a little bit chillier. And then as we go throughout the evening hours, those numbers continue to steadily decline. Low 40s, eventually back down into the 30s, and already feeling below freezing temperature as we go into the midnight hour later on tonight. So satellite and radar has been kind of misleading so far this morning, to say the least, because it showed widespread cloud cover, lots of gray on this imagery. So it has appeared like a gloomy image when I've been showing this all morning long. However, you just got a glimpse of those sky cams when we walked it around the quad. There's plenty of sunshine in the forecast. So all of this cloud cover that is very widespread, it is very high up in the sky, and it is very thin in nature. So it's not blocking your sunshine too much. Maybe some areas have a bit of a denser patch of some cloud cover that is leading to some shaded areas. But overall, it does look like high-level cloud cover is the only thing in the forecast here down in the southeast, where you start to see maybe some of that lighter gray shade farther down in south and southeast Georgia. That's going to indicate some lower-level cloud cover, and that's a bit denser in nature. So kind of the more faint that the gray shade is, that is going to indicate some better visibility and at least some more clearing in the clouds, more peaks of sunshine, relatively thin aspect to your cloud cover that you do have. And good news, as we head into the afternoon, we're actually looking at most of that high-level cloud cover to at least creep out of the picture for a little bit. But overall, just anticipate mostly sunny skies throughout the rest of today, maybe a bit of a light breeze on occasion. Then we go into tomorrow morning, where some high-level clouds are still in the forecast, but starting out virtually the same as we did on Monday morning, as we did this morning, once again for your Wednesday morning. Then as we go into lunchtime, we start to see some changes on the horizon, and I think the biggest change you are going to notice throughout the day on Wednesday, mainly lunchtime and all the way through the afternoon into the evening, is increasing cloud cover. And eventually, as we go past sunset tomorrow evening, we are going to look at a couple of sprinkle showers to maybe pop up in a select few spots as early as late Wednesday night. So sometime around 10 to 11, maybe even the midnight hour. Nothing really substantial in the way of rain, but it could linger into the morning hours on Thursday, where we could see some clusters of some more widespread light showers, maybe even some pockets of some steady rain. But I do have the most confidence in seeing some more widespread rain happening during the first part of the day on Thursday, and this rain going to be on and off basically all day throughout your Thursday. Right now I have about a 20% chance of rain. I might give that a bit of an uptick over the next couple of hours, as we are seeing pretty decent coverage of rain, maybe more of about a 40% or a 50% chance of rain, because it kind of looks like a half and half story for your Thursday. Rain chances are a whole lot better up to the north and north of I-16 as opposed to down to the south of it, where you simply just have some overcast and gloomy skies throughout portions of the day. And then that takes us all the way into Thursday overnight into early on Friday morning, where once again, it's a gloomy and maybe even a bit of a messy forecast farther up to the north, but down to the south and the southeast, you actually have some clearing in this cloud cover. We'll continue to fine tune that as we get closer. I think the main highlight over the next 3 days is going to be number one, the reintroduction of those rain chances, of course. And number two, we are going to see a slight warming trend. It's not going to be substantial. We're not getting back into the 70s like we had 2 weeks ago, but we will see some more pleasant temperatures for the afternoon hours, which will make it a little bit more bearable to be outside. And I promise you, you're going to want to soak up some mid-50s and some low 60s, even if it is a gloomy atmosphere, as long as you can, because we are going to see the bottom drop out as we go across the course of this weekend and into the beginning of next week. So one more frigid cold start with a low of 24 tomorrow, then 56 for a high temperature. We start to see that cloud cover increasing, but I do anticipate most of your Wednesday to be dry until we get into the nighttime hours. Then I have about a 10% chance of a sprinkle. And then we have that 20% chance of rain on Thursday. Going to be a story of partly cloudy skies for some, and going to be a story of a gloomy, overcast sky, and maybe even a bit of a dreary atmosphere for most, especially the farther north that you live on Thursday. Once again, I would probably in retrospect go and give that rain chance a bit of an uptick, but the cloud cover will help out because we're starting out in the upper 30s, pretty close to average for this time of year on Thursday morning. And then Thursday afternoon, we should see some areas eclipse the 60-degree mark. But if you keep the clouds present all throughout the afternoon, you might be nestled somewhere in the mid to the upper 50s, very similar to the high temperature on Wednesday. But we should keep those low 60s around as we go into Friday. Then we see the numbers drop as we go into the weekend. Keep this number in mind. It is going to be important. 53 for a high temperature as of right now on Saturday afternoon. We obviously are going to be really looking at the temperatures over the course of this weekend with the potential for that wintry mix. 53 degrees is definitely a chilly rain, but this is far too warm for anything of the frozen nature. So we will kind of take what the models say as we go into Saturday afternoon with a bit of a grain of salt. Now let's go into your morning low temperatures, 24 and 24 for both this morning and tomorrow, 38 and 40 as we roll into the beginning of the weekend. So at least a bit more of a pleasant start on both Thursday and Friday. It may be paired up with some rain though, so obviously maybe having to grab that rain jacket as you go throughout the morning hours for your commute on Thursday and into Friday. And then we go into Saturday where 35 is your morning low temperature. Still not getting back below that 32-degree mark, but we are beginning to see the drop down in the numbers, which will continue as we go across the course of this weekend. So now this is the portion of the forecast that you probably listen to me yap all about our short-term forecast for. This is getting into the weekend. So Friday, I would expect another round of on and off showers. This is going to be liquid precipitation. This is not anything in the way of frozen precipitation. But once we go and transition into Saturday morning, you see all of that widespread precipitation over to the west of us. Now that's going to push over, which you will see as I click through the pause points here in just a moment. But I did want to go ahead and tell you that this is just precipitation rate. This is not going to be precipitation depiction, which I will get into and I will show you in the next couple of graphics about what form that rain is going to be. Is it going to be rain? Is it going to be a wintry mix? Is it going to be snow showers like we were talking about as of this time last week? But I wanted to go ahead and time out when those rain chances are going to be as we go throughout the course of this weekend. 8 a.m. on Saturday does look like some rain or something in the way of precipitation creeps up into our northernmost counties in the state of Georgia. But then we start to see impacts in the northern half of the state. So farther down to the south, we're not seeing as many impacts until we get into sometime on Sunday morning. So remember, the overnight and evening hours are going to be your cooler portions of the day. That's when you are going to have the best likelihood of seeing something of the frozen variety as far as precipitation goes. But right now on Sunday morning, it does look like a very messy picture, no matter if it's rain, no matter if it's a wintry mix. So any plans that you have on Sunday morning, I know many of your church services probably got canceled or postponed this past Sunday morning. it's not looking like the best forecast for church services for the second week in a row. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. I want to get out there and go to church as well, but when the weather calls, you very well might likely be up here covering it over the course of this weekend. So then we go into Sunday evening, where the precipitation still widespread, still all over the southeast, not only central Georgia, but North Georgia, back into Alabama, up into the Carolinas. We finally see signs of the precipitation beginning to leave on Monday. However, remember, I told you about that weather impact alert. It still goes through the morning on Monday, and we will talk about why that is. Not only because of the fact we could have something in the way of some precipitation still lingering in the forecast early on Monday morning, but we are looking at the temperatures to continue to drop down well below freezing as we go into Monday. And then as we progress all the way into Tuesday, we see some clearing, not necessarily buying what the GFS is putting down here, where we could see some backside moisture. I do anticipate us to be nice and dry after we get through this weekend. So here's a look at the type of precipitation that you are going to see. It's the same model runs. It's the GFS and the Euro, the only two models that have this weekend within range right now of what's going to really happen. And then you can see back over to the west, there is some frozen precipitation in northern Oklahoma, transitioning into that pink shade that's going to be down in southern Oklahoma. And then it's just straight up rain for most of Texas. So after that rain moves out of the picture for us on Friday, we are looking at the temperatures to drop down. So some much colder air from Canada is going to push down towards the south, and it's going to clash up against all of this moisture that is moving up to the north from the Gulf. So when you have the combination of those two features, it can result in your fair share of widespread precipitation of the frozen nature. Now this makes sense. North Georgia and maybe even the Atlanta area starting to see a bit of a wintry mix and even some snow showers in the morning hours on Saturday. Now as we transition into the afternoon, take a look at this. Widespread wintry mix for areas to the north of us. But remember what I told you, our afternoon high temperature on Saturday, right now it's at 53 degrees. That is well too warm for anything other than rain to fall from the sky. So right now we're going to keep a close eye on this. I'm not necessarily too confident in Saturday exactly kicking off the frozen nature of this precipitation, just given what our high temperatures are as of right now. But the temperatures will drop as we go into the evening and the nighttime hours, Saturday into Sunday. And that's when I think we are going to start to see maybe the accumulation of a wintry mix. That's what this pink shade is. Remember, a wintry mix is going to be sleet or it's going to be freezing rain. So it is going to be precipitation that falls as a liquid but freezes as it gets closer to the surface, or as it hits the surface, which is freezing rain, and it freezes just before hitting the surface as sleet. So a messy environment, but not only is this just going to be possibly a wintry mix, we could have our fair share of some rain mixed in there. But if we have it for this prolonged period of time where you continue to see all of this pink in the forecast, that is going to result in the accumulation of a lot of that water at the surface. And yes, as we go into Sunday morning, we might see the numbers pop back up above freezing temperature, but I don't anticipate much in the way of drying out because yes, it is still a messy environment and we are going to continue to have something in the way of precipitation, whether it's just rain or whether it's a wintry mix. And then as we go Sunday into Monday, that is when the temperatures are forecast to be the coldest over the course of this weekend. So anything that is still sitting at the surface is going to freeze over, and that's very likely when we're looking at the most impacts possibly on Monday. So it does look like Sunday morning and Monday morning are probably going to see the most impacts in terms of maybe things like ice accumulating at the surface, but eventually all of that precipitation gets out of here. We start to see more sunshine, and hopefully peaks of sunshine on Monday will allow for a lot of that to start to melt, anything that is still frozen and stuck down at the surface. So this is not going to be like what we saw on Sunday. Right now the model guidance is really confident in at least the specific timing and the type of impacts that we are going to see. Take a look at this up-close view of the GFS where we start to see that pink. Once again, starting in the afternoon on Saturday, I'm not necessarily buying that just given what our high temperatures are, but if we see the high temperatures go down, then of course that is going to make me more confident in a wintry mix being present all throughout your Saturday afternoon. But as we go Saturday night into overnight Sunday and the early morning hours on Sunday, that does make me a lot more confident in this widespread pink, and that will continue for the first part of Sunday until maybe we start to see some of that rain creep back up into the forecast, or just like this past weekend, we could see this event start to pull down cooler air from higher levels of the atmosphere while something of the frozen form is continuing to fall. And it does look like it's trying to wrap up as we go into Sunday night, where it's still mainly a wintry mix, but some snow showers start to push in from north down to south as most of this moisture begins to leave the forecast into Monday morning. Again, I'm not necessarily picking up what these models are putting down in terms of the exact timing. That is going to be something that we need to fine tune over the course of the next couple of days. But we have issued the weather impact alert mainly for the fact of this, because future view ice accumulation, according to the GFS model, once again, that model that we just looked at, has accumulations of 1 to 2 inches in northern central Georgia. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you this right now. We have a lot more confidence in areas farther to the north seeing potential winter weather impacts than areas farther down to the south. The farther and farther south that you go, the confidence diminishes pretty drastically, but we do have confidence in at least North Georgia seeing some form of winter weather impacts, and that could creep into northern central Georgia. And these ice amounts right here, this is pretty drastic. Like I mentioned, only about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch of ice is enough to lead to power outages, enough to lead to some hazardous travel conditions. We could see quadruple that if this scenario plays out up in Jackson, areas like Eatonton with close to 2 inches of ice accumulation. But you may say, Alex, that's just one model run. You always tell us to not buy stock into one individual model run. And that was the GFS, the model that I referred to as the Browns as of last week. So let's go over to the European, the GFS's counterpart, and the Pittsburgh Steelers of models in terms of trying to predict these events a little bit earlier. The model of consistency, which one is typically pretty correct. So it does have the wintry mix and farther up to the north, and our fair share of rain as we go into Saturday afternoon. We start to see that pink color sag down to the south as temperatures get colder Saturday night into Sunday morning, and then we start to see some of that rain build back in from south up to north. So a good mix of freezing rain, something in the form of a frozen variety of precipitation and just liquid variety of precipitation throughout Sunday afternoon. And then as we progress Sunday night into Monday morning, I would expect more of a widespread frozen nature to some precipitation, but I think it is going to kind of be a good dividing line in between central Georgia and areas farther up to the north of us. So let's take a look at the ice accumulation. According to this model, it is almost the exact same. We're talking near 2 inches of ice accumulation farther up to the north, transitioning down to more about 1 inch of accumulation. It's only areas down in our far southern counties that may not see any accumulation of ice whatsoever, but even at that, 4/10 of an inch, 1/2 an inch down in Rochelle and Eastman, that is still enough to lead to some power outage concerns, and that is still going to be enough to lead to some hazardous conditions that I promise you do not want to be out on the roads for. So this is the other end of things. Obviously, we had our fair share of snow over this past weekend, and it didn't result in any concern on the roads. It was just a very wet atmosphere on the roads, something that you did need to take it a little bit slower for, but it didn't result in some slippery conditions that can make it hazardous to drive on. This is what we are talking about this go round, hence why we have issued the winter weather impact alert, and it is good to note that we are still a good deal out. So 4 to 6 days out, we are still looking for model consistency around this time, but we have seen that over the last 24 hours. So it's giving us a better idea of those potential impacts. The more and more these models agree with each other well ahead of time, it makes us a little bit more confident in our prediction for what's to come. And just given the possible impact of a widespread ice storm that could have an implication of widespread power outage issues, that is the reason why we have gone ahead and issued this weather impact alert. But again, the timing is going to be subject to change, but this initial issuing of it all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and going into the first half of Monday, as we could see a lot of that precipitation on the ground freeze back over into your Monday morning. So potential wintry mix and ice accumulations. Just because it is not necessarily sleeting or you're having freezing rain, it is just straight up chilly rain, doesn't mean that you can't still have the accumulations of ice. Like I mentioned, each and every night we're going to dip back below freezing, and that is going to result in the possible kind of puddling up and then eventually stacking up of some icy conditions, which may take a while to get out of the forecast and a while longer in order of melting time, unlike what we did see with the snow this past weekend. So stay up to date. Make sure that you try to avoid the roads during this weekend, specifically Sunday morning and Monday morning. Postpone those outdoor plans. If we're continuing to having more and more confidence in the possibility of some widespread power outages, we'll continue to let you know. But right now it's well ahead of time. Now is the time to just go ahead and get a plan in action just about what's to come this weekend. It's not looking like the best scenario, but again, things can and will change, and we will keep you updated with those changes as they happen. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.